Tori Amos, how wonderful to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Phil.
I've been struggling. This is a challenge for me because I've loved you since the early 90s and I've been trying to think of so many questions to ask you. And I know we've got a short time and I'm going to try my best to try and get every question in. Because you've had such a varied and intriguing career. And I think it's always difficult to get those questions in a short space of time.
Yeah, but I don't know. I couldn't ask questions, I have to tell you. I think it's really tricky finding questions to ask.
Yeah.
Because people think it's easy to ask people questions, but I don't know if it is. I think to get the right questions is quite a skill.
Maybe. And I guess you're probably bored with being asked the same questions as well.
Well, I try and find different answers. So that it's fresh for both of them.
Yeah, so it makes it easier for you too.
Yeah.
I guess a good way to start, a good place to start is the new album.
Yes, Unrepentant Geraldines.
Yeah, interesting title and an interesting story behind that as well.
Yeah, I saw a drawing of Geraldine in Ireland, and she was looking up at the Mother Mary, and you reckon she's been up to something because she was very penitent. She reminded me of the Repentant Magdalene pictures that we saw a lot of from the many artists for hundreds of years. And as a minister's daughter, there's a side to me that has always been wondering about the things women think about that we're supposed to be guilty about or apologetic for, even if we haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
There's that something in the DNA from our grandmothers. I don't know what it is that makes you think, oh my goodness, my grandmother would be throwing the Bible at me right now. She knew it was on my mind.
So I guess the message is not apologising for your beliefs.
Yes, that's
and who
right.
you are.
And who you are. That's
Which
right.
I guess could be a gay pride. There could be a gay pride logic to that as well.
Yes.
Especially at the moment. It's very topical, isn't it?
Yes, I think you
Gay
have
marriage.
Gay marriage, I think you have to stand by what you believe in. And there comes a time, it doesn't mean that my beliefs, I don't grow or learn things. But I turned 50. I'm 50 this year, last year, but I'm still 50. And it was a moniker. It was a place of thinking, what do I believe in? Where do I stand? I need to not just, again, we all talk about walking the talk.
Yeah.
Not just talking about it, but
Sure.
living what you believe and standing by those beliefs.
And I guess doing more as you get older as well because you've got more knowledge and experience.
Yes.
And not to do things the bad way like you have done maybe before.
That's learning.
Yeah,
That's
learning
right. That's
by
learning.
mistakes.
Yeah, there are going to be things, of course. There are things in our 20s. Of course, there are things that I've done at different times. Even recently, sometimes I wish I had said this in a different way to this person. I wish I had a bit more patience that day. And you think about, we all have hindsight. You know, it is 2020. Yeah. But of course, in your 20s, there have to be things where you just think, oh, no.
Has it made you question what you're unrepentant about and what you're not going to apologise for anymore?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Did you used to when you were younger, more so, or have you always been unrepentant?
Sometimes I've been unapologetic for certain beliefs as an artist. But there's a time when you have to look, are you just being righteous? And there can be a sanctimonious righteousness. And hanging around the Brits, it's brought me a bit more humor.
Oh, really?
A little bit more levity. And sometimes you think, okay, maybe I need to be smart, not right in this situation. So how do we get a win here? Yeah. How am I going to accomplish this win? And you begin to learn, sometimes you have to persuade people of an idea. And even though you know, okay, artistically, this is the direction that we need to be going in. It's the most exciting, brave direction. But you don't always get people on board by telling people something. You have to invite them in. And it's just something my mom, my wonderful, amazing mom would say, oh, honey draws the bees, baby.
That's interesting you should say that about the Brits because I've always thought we can be miserable. And I always see a sunny disposition with Americans. that I don't think we have so much here. So it's interesting your take on learning from us.
But you're very self-deprecating.
Yeah.
And I think that can be charming to a point. But it is charming.
Can be annoying as well, though.
If it goes on too long,
Yeah.
yeah. But what I think is great about the Brits is that they can really they can take the mick, and I love that about them. You know, you can be laughing. Everybody can be in hysterics about it. And sometimes, my God, is that the greatest medicine ever? Laughter.
Yes, absolutely. And I think Joan Rivers said exactly the same thing. I think post 9/11, actually, I think there was a joke about 9/11 in one of her shows, and she got, criticism for it. But she said, where would we be if we couldn't laugh?
Yeah, well, I mean, what a great lady she is. I know she's a great icon. And when I think of Joan and oh my God, I just never want to end up on that show. You think the fashion police, you think, oh, please, Joan, never let me go underneath your guillotine. But the thing that I've loved about her is that she's had to fight. Yeah. She's had a long career, long battle to fight as a great comedian.
Strong woman, isn't she?
Strong woman. And if we're fair about it, should she have had some of those great TV shows? Should she have had The Tonight Show, or should she have been given those opportunities? She was a guest so many times, and yet she didn't. But
can you imagine if she'd hosted a show? It would have been fantastic, wouldn't it?
She was stepping in as a host, as a guest host. I remember watching her for many years, on and off, and yet she was never given those opportunities. So the fact that she has a big show now and a huge following, and she's worked very hard to get there, even though I don't always agree with her perceptions, that's not the point.
Yeah. So in hindsight, with the new album, learning what you've learnt throughout your career, and it's been an amazing career, would you say that you're more yourself in your new record? Because I think you've always been very personal in your records, lyrically, especially.
Yes. My daughter said to me, this record, Mom, doesn't remind me of you investigating a sound. It's many sounds. It's many songs about many stories. It's not just me talking about, like Scarlet's Walk, which was post 9/11, right after that, and investigating, walking across the country, or American Doll Posse, which was me playing different women, and those women had certain styles of music based on the Greek pantheon. So sometimes these records were very specific records, and this album is about stories, hopefully that talk about all kinds of things. Hopefully you'll laugh and maybe cry.
Is there less darkness on this record? Because I've always been drawn to the darkness in your previous albums. I mean, especially when you look back at Pretty Good Year, which starts off very pretty on the piano and then turns quite powerful.
I think there's
3/4 of the way in.
Yeah, I think there's I think there's surprises, Phil, in the record. I do. I think sonically, hopefully, it's beautiful to listen to, but there are subjects that are harrowing, I think, relationship-wise. There are a lot of relationship songs that I think explore the dark side of a relationship. That's how I see it. But I'm not shouting on them. So it's how you see it. It's how you perceive it. But if you're hearing what's being said, and if you're hearing the sentiment behind it, the fact that it's being crooned very quietly, it's that juxtaposition that I hope gets the emotion.
Sometimes that's more powerful, isn't it? It's like a subtle darkness that's underlying.
I hope so. I think that's through the record, along with giggles, laughing about the NSA, that very serious subject.
Yeah.
But I needed to put it in a context that people could laugh their heads off, because I felt like, okay, it hasn't been very funny in the States, that subject matter. I think college kids are very interested in the ramifications of spying and the government being able to look at all our information. And the questions I wanted to bring up were, what I wanted to get people talking about was, if you aren't going to threaten civilization, or I'm not going to in our emails, but we are asking questions, if we are starting to get people, I wouldn't say stirring it up, but maybe so, because that's what you do. You ask questions as a writer, you get people thinking. And could there be a situation where the security forces are crossing a line and thinking, well, no, they're not a threat, quote unquote, to civilization, but do we not want this message out there? The McCarthy era, as you well know, you've read about, I've read about, is not that distant, where writers were being censored, people were being brought into court, lives were being destroyed. And I guess that is got to be a concern if people have access to all our information. Is there a place where a security force person would say, well, we're going to make it difficult for this person because we want to silence them? It's a question. And I'm not just saying Britain would do this or America would do this or Germany would do this. I'm just putting it out there. The questions have to be raised.
And also, it affects everybody, I guess, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Around the world, not just in one country.
Yes, it does.
Now, this is interesting because you began playing in bars at the age, was it 13? It's quite young, wasn't it? In gay bars as well.
Gay bars.
On the piano.
That's right.
And you were supported by your father as well, who, you've got a very religious family.
Yes.
Which I think is incredible because most of the time, I would say probably a lot of the time, that wouldn't happen because religious people would be very anti that idea.
You've made a very good point, and I've had to acknowledge over the years, although my dad was very committed to his faith, and I guess there was a time where he might have been a Billy Graham type of figure, a preacher on television, that he was also very supportive and would chaperone me to a gay bar. And I've had to give it up to him over the years. I've had to say, that was very brave of you, Dad, because he's a mix of many things, my dad.
Sounds like a wonderful man.
To
support you and to support, the gay community as well, because obviously they wanted to, they appreciated you being there as well.
I must say to you, we didn't always agree, especially as I was a teenager. We saw life differently. And he was very controlling in some ways, but in others, he was incredibly, very much a tenacious cheerleader that would say, you can support yourself, you can achieve this, if you put enough work in, you can do it. And that was great.
That's great. That's a fantastic story as well, because, like I say, a lot of the time you wouldn't have that support initially.
Exactly. You wouldn't have that. And he got some flack. Of course he did, from parishioners at the church when they would say, how in the world can you be taking your daughter to a gay bar to play? And he would just look at them and say, I'd say a teenage girl is pretty safe in a gay bar.
Yeah, probably more safe
than anywhere in the world.
Now, you said that you're not going to shock on this new album. I think you have shocked before, which I think is a good thing. I think it's a very healthy thing to make people ask questions. Well,
I hope you're asking questions with the record.
Yeah.
But I'm not, as my 13-year-old and I said, I'm not doing any interpretive dance, and I'm not, I'm not nursing piglets or anything.
I was just going to ask about the piglet.
Yeah.
But everybody probably asks you about the piglet. So
They do. Yeah, they do. But that's all right. That was my Christmas card. That message was very much about the Madonna and Child photograph. And when do we as Christians, quote unquote, stop judging people and nurture and nurse and suckle those back into the fold, because we do believe in forgiveness of ourselves and of when do we put aside our own judgments and say the Christ consciousness idea was about love, unconditional love. And I have to tell you, there were times in the church that I did see that unconditional love. My mom is one of those people, and there are Christians who are loving. But also, some of the most judgmental place I've ever been in my life is a church about how people live their life and their lifestyle.
Which is the irony, I suppose, as well, isn't it? Because that's meant to be the place of love.
That is meant to be, if you really believe and walk the path of Christ. But I find that a lot of people don't walk that path. They walk the path of judgment and harshness. And my mom and I have talked about that over the years, about not being judgmental about another person's path. You know, I've told this story many times, but Tash and I were watching a story where a boy came out and said he was gay, and it was a terrible response from those around him, and he was shunned. And I just looked at her and I said, you know, okay, Tash, if you were to ever come and home and say to me and to Dad that you were a lesbian and this is your partner, we just want you to know we love you. We love you. And she puts her fork down, she looks at me and she goes, I'm not a lesbian, Mom, but black guys are hot. You know what? I just thought, oh my goodness.
I would agree with her on that, actually.
I say checkmate.
I'm on the turn.
Yeah, I'll tell her you said that. Phil agrees with you, Tash. She'll love it.
What do you think of other artists who have shocked in the past and still continue to do it? I mean, one person obviously we have to mention is Madonna, who is still shocking people at her age. And it seems to be kind of frowned upon, that whole thing of shocking at that age. Do you agree that she's doing the right thing still as an older woman?
I'm not. Well, look, I'm want to be supportive of all the female artists out there. I'm a fan of all of them. Where I sit now, Phil, at 50, I'm a fan of them all, because until you walk in their shoes and in their path and understand what their career has been made up of, the path up the mountain and crossing the Alps, the music Alps, as it were, the choices that you make as an artist are very specific to your beliefs. We're back to being unrepentant. I'm a songwriter. So the songwriters are a bit different from the entertainers, the dancers, the performers in that way, where overt sexuality has been part of their art. And there are quite a few performers where sexuality has been part of their art. Whereas with the songwriters, that isn't the expression that I've been a part of. I might do things, as you know, but it's very specific usually, and it's a statement. Overall, it hasn't been about the showing of flesh. It hasn't. That's just not what has been part of my act, so to speak. The razor's edge and the blades have been the message in the music.
Now, you mentioned your daughter Natasha.
Yes.
Who is 13?
13.
Do you see the 13-year-old Tori Amos in the 13-year-old Natasha?
No. I see amazing things in Tash. I mean, there are things about me that I see. There's, she reasons things in her own way. She thinks in her own way. And I recognize that. But I also see she's really funny. And I was not funny. I wasn't. I've been trained a bit by the people I hang around. But
the Brits.
Yeah, the Brits. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing
not
is,
going to take full credit for that, by the way.
the Brits and the New Yorkers. It's a mixture, of course. So she does approach things differently. She didn't have the religious upbringing. She's seen it. She knows Granddaddy Eddie very well, and she has her own relationship with Granddad and Grandma. But she's had very different upbringing. She's been brought up backstage. So she knows the Sydney Opera House and Radio City and Albert Hall like I knew churches. I was always in a church. And she's been on the road since she was a year old. So she's had a very different upbringing than I had.
What does she think of the celebrity Tori Amos? Does she get that, or does she just see you as mum?
She sees me as mom, and I'm her mom. So that means we'll talk about Tori Amos, and she'll say, we'll talk about perception and wardrobe, and we'll make deals with each other. I mean, she'll say to me, Mom, your strength is in your playing and your songs and your singing. You don't need to pretend you're Beyonce. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think if I had Helen Mirren's body, I've said this, if I looked like her, had her body, and could move like Beyonce, because I can't expect to have Beyonce's body at 50 years old. However, if I had the combination, God knows what I'd be doing on this tour.
But you move in different ways. I've seen you straddling two pianos, which is an incredible thing for anybody to do. And that is energetic, powerful stuff when you're controlling all those, pieces of equipment.
I've been doing
instruments.
Well, I've been doing that for a long time. I mean, I guess I developed that for many years now, and it's something that I enjoy doing. When I'm around a piano, I'm a different person. I step into something different. It's almost as if Invasion of the Body Snatchers. They take over. So the piano plays me.
It possesses you.
It possesses me,
in a
yes.
good way.
But I allow it to.
Yeah.
I allow myself to be possessed.
Because we've seen that. I mean, I think there is a YouTube video that I came across last night, actually, of somebody who's titled it "The Demonic Possession of Tori Amos," and it's basically a montage of all your clips of you going crazy with the piano, and it is like you've been taken over by some strange force.
What it feels like, though, when it's happening as a really, it's not malevolent. There isn't. What it is it's a force.
It's amazing to watch.
It's energy.
It's fascinating.
It's almost as if you put your hand inside this voltage, and this voltage completely, I don't know, gives you new life.
Can you contemplate life, a career, or life, or both, without the piano? It's the most amazing instrument. It's my favourite instrument.
I can't imagine what I would have become without a piano in my life. I really can't, because I think of things, conversations, I work things out in my mind through the piano. I just do. That's how I work things out. That's the first language. Music is my first language. So I'm not separate from it. When I hear somebody, I'm listening to the rhythms. I don't always know what they're talking about, but I'm listening to the rhythm that they're creating, their tone. And you get a lot of information just by hearing the music.
I have to talk about your new single, Trouble's Lament, which I love, and it's the only single. Well, I've heard bits from the album. I heard your live renditions, the concert you did recently, and I love it. And I love the Deep South. It kind of is a bit True Blood. That do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
kind of quite eerie.
Good. Well,
it's the guitar, I think, maybe as well.
Yeah, right. We had fun. Mark and I had a lot of fun. He's Mac Aladdin. And we've been playing together for years and years. And Tash has grown up with us. And at a certain point, because of all the demands with the other projects going on, there just wasn't time to bring musicians in, musicians I love and adore working with. And so Tash said, "Oh, guys, just do it. You all play everything anyway." I mean, what she's grown up with hearing, she hears us do that in Florida or wherever we are. We're a music family. And so we just kind of did it. We just played everything. And he had been playing her some Stevie Ray Vaughan music, which, that's just, I just get tingly all over when I hear it. And he was playing it for her. And I kind of thought, you know what? I think that kind of got into underneath my skin. And I started you know how you move to that music? You just start moving to it. And I think that was a real influence for Troubles Lament.
It sounds fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing the album in full. And also seeing you at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah, I love the Royal Albert Hall.
It's a beautiful venue.
Magical place.
Can we talk about remixes? Because I know, obviously, this, I would imagine, changed your life. It gave you a massive hit, the Armand Van Helden remix.
Yes, it
A
absolutely.
Professional Widow.
He did a great job.
He did an amazing job. And still, it's renowned, it's regarded as a classic. Have you been tempted to do that again? Because I know you have remixed and you've commissioned remixes before. Choir Girl Hotel was a good example of that. You did quite a few remixes for that album.
Yeah, we've had remixes throughout the years. That was just one of those special moments in time, whereby I don't think you can't chase that. It's hard to explain, but Johnny D, the guy at Atlantic Records, who had put a lot of songs on Boys for Pele out to different remixers. There were quite a few that went to different people. But when that one came in, it just, I remember very well, I was on the bus after the show, and we were bus surfing to it as we were moving across the states. And I just, in that moment, I kind of thought, I don't know what's going to happen to this, but there's something special about it. So I don't think it's not something, Phil, that you can contrive.
Yeah.
Just certain things aligned.
I get that. I remember the first time I heard it, and I was in a gay club in Brixton called The Fridge, which was called, the night was called Love Muscle. And I remember hearing it and thinking, that's Tori Amos. I'm sure that's Tori. And everybody, it was such a strange feeling. It almost was like, I don't know, like something that no one had ever heard before. It sounded strange but good.
Yeah, it was
to hear you, with a dance remix.
It is such great fun, and people come up to me all the time.
One thing that I've heard a lot of, maybe not so much in the last 10, 15 years, but probably at the early start of your career, is the similarities to Kate Bush. And it's something that, despite it being a big compliment, I think I used to get quite annoyed about, because I see you as a very different artist. I guess there are connections, piano, similar voice, which I suppose the way she used to sing, maybe not so much recently. Is that something that you've been aware of, or that has annoyed you? Or
well, people would bring it up a lot in the early days, and she's such a great artist that when you're going to get compared to somebody, my goodness gracious, that's such a compliment.
It's a good one, isn't it, to be compared to?
Yeah, and I do think sometimes when people are defining a new artist, they seem to need to compare.
Yeah.
That's how they begin to explain things. Once I got my head around it, I began to have fun with it, because again, I think that she's made some beautiful records and powerful records, and I think it's so exciting that she's going to be performing again.
Yes. Are you going?
I'm touring.
At the same time?
I am touring, so unfortunately, I don't get to have that wonderful experience. But the thing is, I'm thrilled to be able to tour as well, because when you get to, when you're 50, you say, yeah, 80 cities. That's very exciting, and I'm grateful. I don't want you to think. I don't take it for granted. You can't take it for granted, because the fact that you're able to make a new record on a major label, there are a lot of great writers that are 50 and up that aren't getting those frontline record contracts compared to some of the men. So, Tash said to me, okay, Mom, I get it. Well, just go rock. So I go, okay.
And fantastic that you still got a massive following as well.
It's wonderful. Wonderful.
All this time down the line. It's great. Okay, one more question. Is that okay? Thank you. Have to talk about The Light Princess, which I loved. I enjoyed it so much, and it was a little bit different to what I was expecting as well. The musical, obviously, that you've been working on.
Yes, The Light Princess. It's been exhilarating. Feminist fairy tale. We wanted to really talk about teenagers and their parents, even if their fathers are kings, and when there's so much power involved with the fathers that they can't necessarily make the right decision for their children. So we were all propelled and energized. And the National encouraged us. They said, don't dumb it down. Be great.
Yeah.
Challenge people. Divide people. And I love getting people to think and even making them uncomfortable with certain subjects. So I'm thrilled to tell you that we're going to be recording the original cast recording. I'm producing it.
Oh, that's amazing.
For Universal Records, so it's a major label.
That's fantastic.
And that'll be out early next year. So
Great.
we're making a record while we're touring. As I said to my crew, oh, come on, it's 80 shows and a record.
Tori, it's been absolutely wonderful meeting you today. And I wish you all the success with the album and looking forward very much to seeing you at the Royal Albert Hall as well.
Thank you.
And good luck
Phil.
on tour.
Thank you.